Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Life Masterclass. How are you all doing? My name is Elizabeth Akiniyi, and today I'll be talking about why some women struggle with self love after a toxic relationship. I'm sorry if I sound so low and if I look so low because I'm not in my right mind, I'm not in my right senses. But I just thought I had to do this video because I've been procrastinating this video for the past 2 weeks and it's not so good. So because I'm having some things messing up my mind right now, and it's been taking me a long time to solve it. But but I decided I had to just take the bull by the horn and make today's video. So I'm sorry if I sound so low. I'm sorry if I don't look so happy. I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. So let's get to what we want to talk about today. And that is why some women struggle with self love after a toxic relationship. Living a toxic relationship is the first step towards your emotional freedom. But that's not all. There are some things you still need to do. There are some things you need to know before you to have full emotional freedom. And when you are unaware of all these things, it tends to have to bring a setback into your emotional freedom. It brings a setback into your life. What I'm actually trying to say is that if, let me put it this way, you have actually left the toxic partner, you've actually moved away from that toxic partner, but if their voice keeps living in your mind, then it tends to control the way you think, the way you see yourself, and the way you actually treat yourself. So you will begin to see yourself from their own perspective, and they will still continue to control your life, even though they are no more physically in your life. And this is because of the psychological, emotional, and sometimes the spiritual damage that has been done on the mind, which leaves an imprint on the mind. So it becomes a programming in the mind, but it is actually a mind programming that actually makes such women, even though they're out of the toxic relationship, they engage in activities and behaviors and habits that will actually cause them more pain. So they engage in self-destructive habits, self-sabotaging habits, and many of them don't understand why they do the things that they are doing. They can't explain it. Most times, many of them must have tried to practice self-love, but they just see that it's very impossible for them to practice self-love. It's impossible for them to bring themselves to set boundaries. They still go into self-judgment, they still go into self-criticism, they still look down on themselves, they still tell themselves things that they shouldn't be speaking to themselves. They tell themselves demeaning words. They always tend to say yes when they mean to say no. Some might actually feel a deep void in within. They don't understand what is causing the emptiness. Some might don't understand what is causing the pain. So they've asked themselves several questions, but they don't understand. But what they don't understand is there is something going on in within of them, an inner battle that makes it impossible for them to practice self-love. So those are the things I'm going to be explaining today. Those invisible war, that's invisible battle that they're actually encountering in within of their mind that makes self-love an impossibility or a struggle for them. I used to be someone that actually used to hate myself. I was someone I really hated myself. I really hated myself. I'm going to repeat this again. I really hated myself. And it was not my fault that I hated myself. It was due to a traumatic experience in my childhood that led to deep self-hatred. I was deep into people's pleasing. I was always feeling empty. I was moving from one toxic relationship to another to fill the void. I did not understand what was actually making me move from one toxic relationship to another. Actually, my sense of fulfillment, the way I feel fulfilled is by being in a relationship. If I'm not in a relationship, I don't feel complete, I don't feel whole. So I was moving from one toxic relationship to another, and I did not understand until 2023 when I actually went for therapy. That was when I discovered there is an unseen battle going on inside of me. And those unseen battles are what I want to explain to you today. So, to make you understand what is actually going on inside of you that is stopping you from practicing self-love. The aim of today's class is actually to bring awareness, because I believe that it is when you have awareness, that is when you can actually look for solution to a problem. It is when you are aware that there is a problem in your life, that is when you can actually seek solution. So the whole aim of everything I'm going to talk about today is for you to have an awareness of what is going on inside of you, so you can take the next step of actually looking for a solution to that problem. So that is the main aim. And also, I'll be sharing my own personal experience, how I moved from self-hatred to self-love, all the things I had to go through before I could actually move to self-love, because I think it's high time I talked about this. I've held on to this for too long, and it's not helping me in any way. So I have decided it's time to talk about it. There's nothing to be ashamed of. It's happened to me, but I'm a survivor and I'm still moving on with my life and I'm happy. So I need to talk about it today to just get it off my shoulders. So those are the things I'll be talking about today. And moreover, I want to say I am not a therapist. I am only a coach. Whatever I'm going to be telling you here today is based on my own personal experience and based on my own coaching experience, and also based on the research that I have made, because I had to make different research before I could actually come up with everything I was actually talking about today. Even though I had the personal experience, I had the coaching experience, I had to listen to different resources, get different ideas before I could actually come up with today's video, because it is quite important. So let me start today's class by actually saying that the start of a toxic relationship is not always toxic. When a toxic relationship starts, it doesn't start with the manipulation and the control and the mistreatment. It starts with this overwhelming affection, this excessive showering of affection, this excessive showering of gifts, these grand gestures, everything that will make you feel special. They treat you in a special way, and everything is always going so fast. It's going so fast. They don't give you the space to breathe and to say, oh, let's take this slow. Everything is going so fast, and you might think, oh, all this excitement I'm feeling inside of me is actually love. There's butterflies flowing inside my stomach. I've met the right man. I've met Prince Charming. Is the best thing that's ever happened to me. And the reason why they do this is they use this to actually gain control over you. Is actually what they do is actually called love bombing. Love bombing is an emotional manipulation tactics which is meant to make you commit to a relationship so that they can actually start controlling you. And the moment they start love bombing you, and you move into commitment thinking you've met your Prince Charming, then you begin to see a certain dimension of them that you have never seen before. They begin to exert control over you. That is when the criticism will come. That is when the manipulations will come. That is when the gaslighting will come, the mistreatment, the verbal abuse, the emotional abuse, the mental abuse, and every other pain that you have to put up with in the relationship. And you know, as times goes by, you begin to internalize everything they have said towards you. You begin to believe it as your truth. It becomes your reality because it is actually becoming a programming in your mind, and you begin to accept it because you are internalizing it. And as at that moment, because you are internalizing it, then as at that moment you begin to internalize it, then it begins to take shape, it begins to take form in within of you. So let me explain this. Let me break this down so you can actually understand what I'm saying. I'm going to break it down by explaining how the mind works. The mind is comprises of two parts. We have the subconscious part and we have the conscious part. The subconscious part is below and the conscious part is upward. So the subconscious mind deals with the thoughts, the way we think, the way we feel, the way we speak, the habits we choose, the choices we make. It is unseen, but it is responsible for our thoughts, for our thinking, for our habits, for the way we speak, for the way we act. Is responsible for it. While the conscious mind is the one that works with the physical senses. It works with the eyes, with the nose, with the mouth, with the ears. So everything that comes from outside first comes into the conscious mind. So the conscious mind is above while the subconscious mind is below. The conscious mind has the ability to filter whatever comes into it. So when any information is coming from the conscious environment, once the conscious mind gets this and does not believe it to be true, then the conscious mind will not press for it. It won't accept it to be true. It's discuss it, but it discuss it. But on the other hand, the subconscious mind does not have the power to filter any information that comes into it. Its own responsibility is to make any information that comes into it, is to make it grow. That is what it is meant to do. So it makes it grow. So whether it is good information, whether it is bad information, once it gets into the subconscious mind, it grows. So it is like a fertile ground. A fertile ground whereby you plant the seed. It is the seed, the seed, the land does not know whether the seed is good or whether it's bad. Whatever seed you put on that land is what is going to grow. So that is how the subconscious mind works. So once the conscious mind gets information and accepts it to be true, it doesn't filter it, accepts it to be true, the information passes on from the conscious mind, from that conscious state, it moves into the subconscious mind. And once it gets into the subconscious mind, it begins to grow. And once it begins to grow, it begins to show forth in the forms of thoughts, in the way of attitude, in the way you speak, in the way you think, in the way you act. So it begins to manifest because it grows instantly. So it becomes a programming in your mind. It has become a programming in your mind, like the brain is the hard drive. The subconscious mind now creates a program in the mind and stores it in the hard drive, which is in the brain, stores it in the hard drive. So that part of that incident is stored somewhere in the brain. So when you have a man who constantly criticizes you, a man who makes you feel less about yourself, who speaks unkindly to you, or who makes you feel you're not good enough. He tells you you're not good enough. He's always pinpointing your flaws. He's always telling you you are not beautiful, telling you so many negative things that will make you look down on yourself. So once you start accepting this thing, you keep hearing it every day. It has a way that it works on your mind, that it moves from your conscious mind into the subconscious mind. And once it gets into the subconscious mind, it becomes implanted in the subconscious mind and it begins to grow. And once it begins to grow, it becomes a program which is stored in a certain part of your brain. So that is when you start believing everything it says about you. You believe you're not good enough. You believe you can't do anything good with your life. You begin to believe all the lies your abuser has actually told you. So supposing you now leave that relationship, supposing you leave that relationship and you think you're free, you're not free, because the programming that is stored in the hard drive of your mind, which is the brain, will begin to act on you. So you find such women, even though they are out of the toxic relationship, they themselves begin to put up toxic tendencies because it is stored in within of them. So because of all the things that they have heard, that voice keeps ringing in their mind, it keeps ringing in their brain. They start to do things that will make people say nice things about them. That is what will make many of them fall into people's pleasing. So they start to please others to make them stay with them. It's all just because of what is actually going on in within of them. And some of them, because they've been told they can't make, they are not good enough, so they will go every length to actually prove that they can actually be successful in life. So some of them might work very hard and actually become very successful. But when they make a little mistake, when they have a little failure, that is when that programming that's been stored in a part of their brain begins to work against them. That is when they begin to criticize themselves, they begin to judge themselves. They themselves don't understand why they are judging themselves. They think they are judging themselves based on those mistakes that they've made, but they don't understand that it has become a programming in them for them to always be successful. So if they are not successful, they can't love themselves. And when you can't love yourself unconditionally, whereby you can only love yourself conditionally, whereby it is only when you are achieving something good in your life, or when you are actually, or when your strengths are first showing, that is the only time you can actually love yourself. That is not self-love, that is conditional love, because self-love is unconditional. It's unconditional towards yourself before you can actually give it that same unconditional love to another person. So that is what goes on in within of them. There is this program is stored in within of them that keeps making them to do what they don't really want to do. So, and the way control works over the mind, it numbs the mind. The way control works, when you're in a relationship whereby you are being controlled, it numbs the mind completely. Because when you are under the control of a toxic partner, they take some ability away from you. God gave us some ability, and that is the power to choose. God has given us the power to choose. It's a gift He actually gave to us. So when you are being controlled, that ability for you to choose is being numbed. Because God, who even gave us the ability to make choices, to make decisions, does not force decisions on our throats, does not tell us what we want to do. He only tells us that you have the gift of choice. So you are free to make decisions, and you are free to make choices, but you don't have the power to choose the consequences that comes with every decision and every choice that you make. So God Himself does not force decisions, does not force His will upon us. He allows us to make that decision ourselves. But when you are in a toxic relationship, they take away that power away from you. So you have no other option but to actually fall into what they want. So you can't make any decisions for yourself. You can't make any choices for yourself, because they will have controlled you to the spot that they will make you see that you are not good at anything. And because you internalize it, you believe it, you yourself will begin to act on it and begin to say, I can't make those choices. So they silence you, they numb your ability to make choices, they numb your voice, you become totally voiceless. That is when you begin to doubt your reality. You don't know what you want anymore because you are emotionally manipulated, and at the same time you are emotionally controlled. So you are not like a puppet. You are like a puppet. They tell you to sit down, you sit down. They tell you to keep quiet, you keep quiet. You can't actually make your own choice. So this has become a programming in the mind. It has become a programming which you have actually accepted. Such ladies, they accept it as their reality. So they would always want to do everything possible to make their partner see the best in them. And at a certain time, when no matter what they do, their partner does not see the best in them, that is when they grow tired. They grow tired, they become very, very tired. They become tired of trying. That is when they actually fall under the full length of their toxic abuser control, telling them how they are going to live, telling them how they are going to, what they're going to do. So they don't have choices. They can't dream. They can't dream, they can't decide that this is what they want to do for themselves. So if such a woman find it by chance to leave such a relationship, she's going to find herself in a state of not only loneliness, she's also going to be lost because she doesn't even know who she really is anymore. Her voice has been silenced, her ability to choose has been numbed. She won't know what she really wants in within of herself, because deep within of herself, her inner mind and her inner voice has been trained to believe that you can't speak up for yourself. You can't speak up for yourself. So it's a training, it's a programming. So speaking up for yourself is going to be like, it's going to be like, how my oh you I don't really know how I'm going to explain this, but it will become very difficult for such a woman to speak for herself. So in such a place, in such a situation, when she leaves the toxic relationship, she will find it very difficult to say no. She will find it very difficult to set boundaries. Certain boundaries will become a big problem for her. And one of the attributes of self-love is you have the ability to set boundaries. You have the ability to say no to whatever will hurt you or displease you, because you want them to stay in your life. You will keep on saying yes to what we actually hurt you, even though it's even displeasing you. You will still find yourself saying yes, because your mind has been attuned to believe that you can't actually do anything for yourself. You are not good at making any of those choices, and that is what you believe in. Because you believe it becomes your reality. So in that kind of a situation, I would always advise women that it's time for them to go back to their self. Who were they before they actually went into the toxic relationship? What did they love to do? What was their hobby? They should go back into it and try to discover what they really love to do before they went into the toxic relationship. And I found out that some women, during my coaching session with some women, I realized that you can imagine some women criticizing themselves, judging themselves, blaming themselves for being in a toxic relationship. If you find yourself in a toxic relationship, I want to tell you, it is not your fault. If you've been in a toxic relationship does not mean that you are less of a person. Anybody can fall into a toxic relationship. Anybody can move into a toxic relationship. So it is not your fault. But going on to blame yourself for being in a toxic relationship, for judging yourself, for criticizing yourself, it's a sign that you don't really love yourself. Because if you love yourself, you would see yourself through the lens of compassion. So many of these women believe that they have to be perfect, because many of them grew up with a perfectionist mindset, and this has to do with their upbringing. If a child grew up in a home whereby your parents made you feel you have to be 100% perfect before you can get love, then you are conditioned to believe that love has to be earned. Love is something that has to be perfect. So everything about you must always be perfect. So if you find out that you are falling short in any way, or you move into a relationship whereby you are being gaslighted, you are being treated in a way you do not want, such women will tend to start judging and blaming themselves. It is not their fault they keep doing it. It is a programming they have actually taken in right from childhood. They've been made to believe that right from childhood that love is something that has to be earned. So they have this perfectionist mindset. They have this mindset that everything has to be perfect. And all this all boils down to the way we were brought up. Childhood trauma has a very tremendous effect on a child, especially when that child did not heal those wounds and grows into an adult. It really has an effect on the way the child will see themselves, the way the child will actually behave. It will actually decide the way the child will be. And most people that actually experience childhood trauma tend to fall into the hands of toxic partner. They move from one toxic relationship to another because that toxic relationship sounds or seems familiar to them. It is like home to them. So when such people with such tendencies of what they've gone through in their childhood come to them, they see it as home. So they find it familiar. So when they get into the relationship, that is when they begin to see those things that has happened to them before happening to them all over again, and they don't understand that they are actually why they keep moving from one really toxic relationship to another. It is about the childhood wound that is left unhealed. It is about the inner child that is left unhealed. When you grow up with parents that are emotionally unavailable, they are not there, they are actually detached from you, they are not there to meet your emotional needs. Just a child will grow up believing that their emotions and their feelings are not valid. So such a child will grow up with an avoidance attachment style, believing that yes, their voice should not be heard. So they are very, very avoidant in things that they do. They want a relationship, but at the same time they learn to distance themselves because they find it very difficult to trust people. So that is one of the effects that childhood trauma has on some women, that pushes them into toxic relationship. And that is why they find it difficult to actually practice self-love. I myself, like I said, I'll be talking about my own issue. I myself had my own share of childhood trauma, and my childhood trauma started at the age of 6. And I don't blame my parents for what happened to me because they were misled. I don't blame them, but there's something I will actually say my mom did that that was why I actually had to blame her. That when you went through that kind of ordeal, because my mom also had childhood trauma. She grew up in a very toxic environment where she was maltreated, she was treated badly, and eventually when I grew up, when I was, I think, at the age of 10 or 11, she actually had to throw me out and throw me into the hands of those people that actually abused her. And that was where I actually blamed my mom. But I've actually forgiven her, but that does not change the fact that I was really damaged. I remember when I was 6 years old, I had a very strange dream which I don't really understand. The dream was so strange, but it was a revelation of things that were going to happen, or things that were happening, or things that were actually going to happen. And I woke up because the dream was actually terrifying, and I kept crying. I didn't understand what I was seeing. So my parents, they were loving parents as at that time. My mom was a very loving mom, very dedicated mom to the children. And they took me to a prophet instead of them trying to find out what was making me happy, making me cry. They took me to a prophet, and the prophet told them lies about me. So they brought in spiritual control and spiritual manipulation, telling them lies about me, things that I am not. They started telling them I'm an evil person, I'm a bad person, I'm a bad child, I am possessed with an evil demon, and blah blah blah. So they saying all sort of things. And that was when my problem started. My mom hated me with all her being. She believed everything that they said. And my parents were the kind of people that were Christians, but they were also religious and very superstitious. They believe that every word that comes out of the mouth of a prophet is the voice of God. So they believe that one of the ways God talks to you is by a prophet. So when a prophet is talking to them, they believe that it is God that is actually talking to them. So as a result, they believed every word they say. That was when my mom became a different person entirely. My mom now started maltreating me. It was just only the mistreatment. It would have been better, but I was physically abused. I was emotionally and mentally abused. I was also verbally abused. The verbal abuse was what actually killed me most, because even though she would physically beat me up, that didn't have much effect. But what really had the effect was the the verbal abuse. The verbal abuse I had to put up with, all those negative and so hurtful words I had to hear. They pierced deep into my soul as a 6-year-old child, and it was very, very hurting. It was very, very hurting. It got to a certain time they would beat the living daylight out of me, telling me to confess every dark thing I have actually done. And I was like, I'm innocent. Nobody was ready to listen to me. Nobody believed me. They didn't believe what I was saying. They kept beating me, beating me, beating me, beating me. And when I saw that the beating became too much and I could not take those beating anymore, I just had to tell them what they wanted to hear so that they would leave me alone in peace. But that was another mistake I made. That was what made my mom hate me very much. And she was just big. She was really, really cruel. She was really, really cruel. So by the time I was actually 11, and my mom called my dad and told my dad it's time I leave the house. She's not going to stay in the same place with me. So I found myself being pushed out of my parents' home at the age of 11, and I was made to stay with some family friends. And the family friends I stayed with, I thought staying with them will bring an end to all the misery. I didn't know that my mom pushed me into the place where she was being abused as a child. She knew all the things they made her go through. She knew all the emotional torture. She knew the wounds she carried. She still went ahead and pushed me into the eyes. And those people, they were so cruel. They were so cruel. They treated me so bad. They treated me so bad that it got to a state that I became so numb to the pain. I looked at it that I don't blame these people for what they did to me. It's not their fault. If my own mother did not abandon me, these people would not be able to do what they are doing to me. And that was the whole essence of my pain. That was what really caused my pain. I was a child at a very young age. I knew what it is to suffer from depression. Right from a 6, I've been suffering from depression. So I grew up with this mindset that I was a bad person. I grew up with this mindset that I was an evil person, that I had dark powers, that if you are my friend, I'm going to actually hurt you. If you are my friend, I'm going to do something bad to you. So that was the mindset I grew up with. So I believe that every bad thing should happen to me, that they don't deserve anything good to happen to me in life because I was a bad person. So that was how I grew up to become an adult that really hated herself. I really hated myself so much. I justified my mom's actions towards me. I justified the guardian's action towards me as being good, and I judged and blamed myself for what I am not guilty of. So eventually, I think I was in my early 20s, yes, when I found out the truth that everything they said about me was not true. And that was when the story changed. It was like switching from passive to aggressive. All this while I've been passive, putting the whole blame on myself. So by the time I got to know that I was actually innocent, it was then there was this heavy anger building up in within of me. I felt this rage, this heavy rage that so I went through so much injustice for what was not true, and I was really angry. I became very angry, especially as my mom. I could not control my anger. By that time, I have actually started staying with my parents, but I could not control my annoyance. I could not control my anger. I felt so angry. I felt I needed to take revenge for everything that has happened to me. And as a result, I had this uncontrollable anger. It became very difficult for me to manage my emotions. If anybody said anything to me that is hurtful, instead of me to calm down and process it, it became very hard for me to process. Instantly, I will snap and it's going to turn into a fight. So every situation, I could not handle any conflict in a very amicable way. I would turn every confrontation into a fight, into an argument. There will be voices will be raising here and there. So many things were happening to me, and I had this voiding within of me. I don't understand what was causing the emptiness. So I started looking for that void outside by moving into relationships. And I found out that the first relationship, the second relationship, they were all toxic, from one toxic relationship to another. Till the time I got engaged in my late 20s, and when I got engaged, it was also a toxic relationship, and I went through hell in that relationship. I didn't understand what was really wrong with me, why I kept moving from one toxic partner to another. So until when I actually left the relationship, I think that was in 2019, I still went ahead to move into other relationships, but they were still the same pattern. I did not understand what was going on. I couldn't find a decent guy. It was one toxic relationship to another. So eventually I now left the relationship I was in, because that relationship was a very traumatic one. And after I left the relationship in late 2022, I was really broken. And it's really had an effect on me. To just cut the long story short, I had a nervous breakdown. I was taken to the hospital. They had to I was there for some time, and that is when they found out that I had post-traumatic stress disorder. I had bipolar disorder. That was when I started treatment. Everything all boiled down to my childhood. They had to talk about my childhood. They had to talk about what I went through in my childhood. That was what was causing the whole problem I've been having, because the trauma didn't just affect a certain part of my life, it affected every part of my life, even up to my finances. The choices I was making were not good ones. They were self-sabotaging choices. I was making wrong choices. I was making wrong decisions. So that was how I spent the whole of 2023 in therapy, taking care of myself, understanding what was really wrong with me, understanding how my childhood trauma had an effect on my life as an adult, and healing myself, embracing my inner child, honoring my inner child. I had to go through this process, learning everything. So I spent a whole year not working. I spent a whole year not doing anything. I was just eating, sleeping, and taking care of my emotional and mental health. So it was in 2024, that is when I decided it's time for me to get back to the surface, get back to life, and begin to do the things I am meant to do. That is when I decided to go into coaching. That is what made me a coach today. If I did not go through all those experiences, I wouldn't become what I am today. And the thing is, I find joy and fulfillment in doing what I am doing. I am single, I am 44, I'm not married, but I am the most happiest person on earth, because I've learned to find joy and fulfillment in myself. So that was how I was able to shift from deep, intense self-hatred to self-love. I was able to embrace myself. I was able to feel complete in within myself without seeking validation from other people outside, or wanting or other people to validate me. That is when I started taking care of myself. I moved from self-abandonment to taking care of myself, appreciating myself, and loving myself. And the most important thing is, I've forgiven my parents for what happened to me, because I take it that it was not their fault. They were being misled, they were emotionally manipulated, they were spiritually manipulated, and I've forgiven them. And the most important thing is that my parents have actually seek my forgiveness. They asked for my forgiveness. So I have let everything go, but I have held on to it, feeling ashamed to talk about this for a very long time, because I don't know how people will see me or how people will judge me. But I thought, it's my story, it's my life, it is what I had to go through. So I need to talk about this. I need to let other people know about this. It is something that happened to me. It is real. So that was how I was able to move from self-hatred to self-love. And I begin to embrace myself again. So by next week, I'll be talking about how you can actually build self-love after a toxic relationship. They were the things I learned, they were the things I did for myself, which helped me to move from self-hatred to self-love and learn to embrace myself. So I'll be talking about them by my next class. That is what I'll be talking about in my next class. If everything I have said so far, you found some of it so helpful, then go into the comment section and tell me what exactly you learned today and how it has really resonated with you. So I want you to go into the comment section to tell me that. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. For those who are subscribed, I am really grateful. Thank you for your subscription. And those of you who are just watching me for the first time, what are you waiting for? Go to my page and hit on that subscribe button, and also turn on notification to get updates when I make a new video. So ladies, thank you for watching. I hope you've been able to get one or two things from what I've said so far, and I want you to tell me in the comment section, what exactly do you want me to do better? What topics do you want to hear me teach you? I would want to hear it in the comment section. So thank you ladies for staying so long with me. I hope you've learned one or two things, and I'll see you in my next live. Bye.